You're done.
UUOP is done. I will no longer go to Universal. The podcast will cease to
That will be the...
Hey guys, what's going on? And welcome back to the booth. My name is CJ, and with me today, we've got them back. We've got Justin Bofshever.
What is up, everybody? Always awesome to be here.
Matt Barran.
How you guys doing?
Yes. How are you guys doing? How's everything been?
Absolutely amazing. I've been feeling unstoppable.
Yeah.
And I saw like a new thing. It's like when someone asks you like how you're doing, you know, I was like, oh, I'm okay, I'm good, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, I am unstoppable. I'm on top in this world because like I've been feeling just so good lately.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so advice for everyone.
You've been doing the workouts, everything like
Blatchy Fit.
Blatchy Fit, baby. Yeah, I've been on the Blatchy Fit too, and I feel so good.
Yeah,
I feel really good. Yeah,
How
man.
many days you on?
Just a week now.
Week?
But I'm feeling great.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Also, we never talked about your trip.
Oh
Yeah,
my
how did
god,
that
yeah.
go?
So what was that, 2 episodes ago?
Yeah.
I took Kayla for our year anniversary to Orlando, Florida, and we actually went to Disney World. And it was we had a lot of fun. I haven't been to the parks in such a long time. We wanted to go hit all the parks, but it was like everything was booked, and at the time when we went, it was still like mask mandatory, and also I don't know if they're still doing it, but you had to book reservations like in a month, almost 2 months in advance. We booked this reservation. So like we tried to go to Universal Studios and
Islands of Adventure,
and they were just completely sold out. But the trip was absolutely amazing, and anyone trying to go on like a vacation right now, I highly recommend. I know my cousin's there right now, and it looks like so much fun.
You definitely got to do I love Universal so much. It's one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
During the whole COVID thing, I don't know if you were here for it. No, we did go.
We went together.
But I remember like when we couldn't go to the parks, I actually built a roller coaster in my backyard.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
that was insane.
You guys
Yeah, that
remember
was crazy.
The dark ride.
Not the
But it
dark
wasn't a
ride,
dark ride,
but
yeah.
the actual like the one.
I never got to ride it.
I know.
You got to build another one.
It was a death trap. That's the
That was
only reason why.
crazy.
And our guest today, I mean, I'm sure he has a lot to talk about Universal
Yeah, I
and
would
how.
imagine.
What's that?
I said I would imagine.
Oh yeah, and how amazing it is. So let me bring on our guest because I'm really excited to get talking to him. So today's guest is the creator and host to one of the greatest podcasts on earth about the greatest place on earth. We've got the owner to the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast, Lee Mallaby.
You gotta turn them on, Matt.
Yeah, you gotta turn him on. Bring him in. Oh, here we go.
All right, here we go.
That is the best
There we go.
introduction I think I've ever had in my life ever.
Oh yeah, you know we're working on the transitions into the guest. That one was a little rough, but you know what? We're getting there. We're getting flowing. Maybe you can give us some pointers since you've been doing it for so long.
Oh yeah.
But before we dive into any of that, how did you get into Universal? So you're from across the pond.
Yes, I am currently sat inside a quite sunny UK, actually, believe it or not. But I've had 2 days of sun so far this year, so we're kind of enjoying it by sitting down and doing a podcast inside. But there you go.
Yeah. So how did you even start, like, hear about Universal, like, decide that you absolutely love the place? Like, what was your first trip?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was one of those. Orlando was that sort of mecca from people going out from the UK. It was always that thing that it was so expensive, so you were never ever going to get to go. Mm-hmm. And Tracy, my wife, and I, we had some things go on in our life. I don't want to delve into that too much, but that made us kind of pull the trigger and go, do you know what? We're going to treat ourselves. We're going to go to Orlando for the first time. And we went in 2004, and I'm going to hate saying this, but it was primarily Disney World. That's what we went for.
Yeah.
That was what the draw was. That's what everybody knew.
I was gonna say, I think that's what a lot of people like. That when you think Disney or when you think like you think
Or
Magic
theme parks.
Kingdom. Like
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think Magic Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's still like that a little bit. I think Universal are definitely coming out of Disney's shadow at this point, but that was the draw for us, and everything else was subsequent to that. But I remember from walking into Islands of Adventure for that first time, just falling in love with the place. Islands of Adventure is like no other theme park out there, especially like UK theme parks are the more like your Six Flags theme park. It's light theming around the rides, but to find a park that is resort wide themed so well like Islands of Adventure, it blew our minds to walk into something like that, and we just fell in love with Islands, and then being huge movie fans. That was like Universal Studios Florida was amazing, and then we went to Halloween Horror Nights that first year as well. And CJ, you know from listening to the show what big Halloween Horror Nights fans we are. It all came together, and it ended up. We went out again sort of 6 or 7 months later, and we just ended up falling in love with Universal over Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. It might shock you, and I hate saying this, but I haven't yet to go to Halloween Horror Nights. And I know everyone's going to like shun me right now. I really want to go. But how, like, everyone, like you saying, it's like it made you want to just go back and like start this podcast has been going for 10 years now, just from one amazing trip that you had.
Well, yeah. How did you even get into the podcast space for Universal?
It was, again, obviously enjoying the park so much on that first trip, and just I have quite an obsessive personality. So when I find something that really grabs me, I just wholeheartedly throw myself into it. And I came back, and it was obviously, we're talking 2004, so podcasts were only just in the infancy at that point. So I was constantly coming home looking for things to immerse myself in, that being as far away from it as we are. And I actually found, I think it was the Diz Unplugged podcast. The Diz Unplugged podcast was the first one that I found. And then the dominoes that fell down for that, found more and more, and then found myself looking for Universal podcasts. And there wasn't really any out there. The Diz Unplugged had sort of tried it briefly. There was a couple of British podcasts that come in and they tried to do it, and nothing that really stuck.
Yeah.
And I ended up guesting on a now defunct Disney, a British Disney podcast called Your Mousecast, where their shtick was they did news and stuff, and then a trip report. So I got on there and I enjoyed it so much. I was like, this just suits me to the ground. I will talk all day long, especially about something that I am so passionate about.
Yeah.
And I pestered them for ages. Like, if you ever need a fourth host, you know where I am, constantly badgering. And then it sort of suddenly occurred to me, it's like, why am I badgering these people to be part of their thing?
Yeah.
And just do my own.
I love it.
And a guest they had on, I know, had mentioned that he wanted to do Universal podcast, so I reached out to him. And we went and had a bit of a back and forth. I feel like I've told this story a million times at this point. We actually had a name. I'm not going to mention it because it was terrible. We had everything set up. We hadn't actually spoken at that point. So we had a Skype chat, and that connection wasn't there.
Yeah.
And you guys know that when it comes to something like this, it's all about that chemistry with your co-host.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
And in 10 years of doing this, we've been very lucky that we've never really vetted anyone. The people that have joined us on the show to host it with us, we just have a natural connection to. Darren, Hunter, Michelle and Chris. We just naturally get on. It's not something we've like held auditions for and gone, you're not right. So anyway, I kind of had to tell him that it wasn't right. And then you start to think, well, who do I have that knows Universal, that loves it as much as I do, and has that chemistry with me? And it's like, Tracy, do you fancy doing a podcast with me? And she was like, hell no.
Really?
Like at that point, well, we were still quite introverted at that point. It's from doing the podcast that has brought us out of our shell for definite.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, I don't want to do that. And eventually I wore her down, and on April 7th, 2011, we put the first podcast out. It was terrible.
But it was out.
Yes, exactly.
It's like we tell our viewers, like, the first step is the hardest step. And like just taking that first step, and even now you can sit back 10 years later and you can laugh about like that first episode, even if you think it was terrible. That in a sense like is why you're here today. And like it has brought you guys to such like an amazing point, which has probably even taken it out of just the podcast. Like it's probably, like you said, it's taking you out of more of that introverted shell, and like now you may even be feeling more confident in your everyday life just from a podcast that you sillily, is that not a word? But something that you started 10 years ago as a joke, not as a joke, but as just like let's just put it out there.
And wait, so when you were like, so what kind of things were going through your mind before you started this? Because like you said, like you were introverted. So, there's a lot of people out there that even I know that want to start their own podcast. So how did you muster the courage to be like, okay, let me just do this? And what kind of equipment did you start with? Like, what was the whole original setup?
In the age of when it's just starting, too. It's just starting now.
this is where it's going to get funny, because it's the thing of comedy legend as far as our podcast goes. So to be honest, I sort of disengaged myself from knowing that we were putting this out for people to go and listen to.
Yeah.
Because it's that thing of, if I start thinking about people listening, and you know what the internet's like, if people are going to judge, they will, and they will tell you about it as well.
Yeah.
So I disengaged myself from that and said, this is something I want to do. I'm just going to do it, and I'll deal with the consequences as it happens. And we've had some trolling going on over the last 10 years, and it was, I'll be honest, that the first few times it happened, it's tough, it's difficult to deal with, because we're not charging people for this. It's not like it's our job, it's a hobby. And when people start giving you crap for it, it's like, hang on, if you don't like it, move on, do something else. You don't have to listen, it's fine.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And a lot of people get like jealous there.
Yeah.
It's like,
because it's not an easy job. You guys know, and you're doing video, which makes it way more difficult. You know how much work goes into something like this. It is a lot, especially if you want it to be the best it can be.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Our initial setup was an old laptop with Audacity on it, and a microphone that I was using from the Guitar Hero World Tour bundle for my PlayStation 3. Yes.
Oh my god. We gotta get the sound quality of that first episode.
Seriously.
Like, that just goes to show you that, like, you could use literally any kind of equipment and still make a good podcast.
And just start.
It's just start. Exactly. We talk about it all the time here on this podcast. It's just like, just give it a go.
Take
just
the first step.
Exactly. Exactly. So I can't believe, so you came over here, you went to Universal, you fell in love, you started doing the podcast. It's been a crazy journey from all the stuff that I've listened to and all the people that you've interviewed. Like, what was it like for your first time interviewing one of these big, like a Julie Zimmerman, or who was the first interview that you had that was someone like high up in Universal?
I'm starting to think.
And how did that feel, like going through that, like, because you're a big Universal fan, so like, what kind of,
I made it?
Exactly, or like, what kind of feelings were going through? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Because like us here, we have a podcast as well, obviously, and when we were in, like, our first interview was with a buddy of ours, and it was very nerve-wracking, just for someone that we know.
Like a really, really close friend. And he also has a podcast. And he was, just like I was telling you, he was so nervous on his end. He was like, I've never been on the other end of the podcast. And we were all just nervous. But I think the episode came out well.
Very well.
In 10 years, hopefully, I can look back and say, please don't watch that episode. It was terrible.
So for you and, the person, so first off, who was the person that you interviewed?
I'm trying to think. As far as people connected to Universal, I think the first major interview we did was John Murdy.
John Murdy? And how did that go?
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing. And like, we've interviewed people like Jim Hill and like sort of in that sort of fan community before this one. That was the first sort of podcast we did with somebody who was part of, for anyone that knows, he is the head guy at Halloween Horror Nights over at Universal Studios Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, crapping myself.
I'm sure.
As CJ is right now.
Still to this day, whatever interview we do, I am still the same. Before every interview we do, that has never changed. And I always look at that as like my Samson strength, that if we ever do an interview and I'm not nervous, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
And that interview, like, Tracy's always been like, why'd you get nervous? I don't understand it. They're just people. They're just like you and me. They all go to the bathroom the same as we do. That's what she always said. So I remember sitting across from her recording that episode, and John was telling us about the time when his dad worked on the back lot working on the filming of Back to the Future, and his dad took him along to the filming of Back to the Future. And that was the point when Tracy looked across the room at me and went, oh my God.
This is why you're
where it finally dawned on it. Yeah, that we are talking to somebody at this point.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I like I say, I get nervous even just when we have listeners on. It doesn't matter who it is, I get nervous all the time.
And would you say that's because of your like introvert personality, or is it just nerves that are built up?
Probably a bit of both. And it's that, because it's that thing you guys know when you do interviews, when it's the three of you You know what to expect. When you throw somebody else in that you don't have that personal connection with, you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. And when you do like the rides that made me or made you,
the three, they named their 3 rides.
Yeah, those are just you, right? That's just you.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's very, very nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And how do you prepare for those? give us some secrets. Give us some secrets.
Deep breath work.
I mean, the last one I did with Patrick really was really good because we've got a bit of a relationship with Patrick now, so that was nice and easy. And we probably spent half an hour just talking about COVID and life and stuff. So when you actually get into it, it's quite easy. But it is like the first one I did with Adam Bezak. I'd never spoken to him before. And he was more interested in me than I was of him. It was weird. It's like, before we get going, come on, I want to know, is this your job? Is this a hobby? What do you do? And I'm like, no, we're here to talk about you, Adam, not me.
Yeah. It's like, I'm willing to interview you today.
He switches it around.
Man. So, oh man, I had this one question that I wanted to ask, and it's a little off topic, but so you're called the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. You ever think about making it the official Universal podcast?
Yeah, why is it the unofficial? And is it because it's not sponsored by Orlando, by Universal?
Yeah, Universal, it's been an interesting 10 years. When we first started, Universal were very much against that, not against that fan community, but they were a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
They were very much, is this what we want to put out? This is our thing, and everyone else can do their thing. But, I mean, I've had my wrist slapped by Universal over the years for doing things they deemed not very nice. Even recently, we actually have a relationship with Universal now.
Yeah.
We get interviews with the Halloween Horror Nights creative team, with the Mardi Gras team and stuff like that. And we have... Shout out to Ali, our PR contact. I love the relationship we have, and that has been a lot of hard work to get to that point with them.
Yeah.
But initially, they didn't want anything to do with us, and we ended up getting our initial relationship with them through Mice Chat when we joined the Mice Chat podcast network back in 2013. At this point, we were getting access, but it was because of them, not because of us.
Yeah.
And then we left them. And that relationship stopped because we weren't with Mice Chat anymore. And now that relationship with Universal is all ours.
Yeah.
It's all on our own merit. I'm very proud of that because it has took a lot of work. But like you guys say, why isn't it the official? Because I think if they were going to have a podcast, it would be all done in-house.
Yeah.
They wouldn't reach out to us. Yes. And that's where it makes it awkward. We've always prided ourselves on being honest about Universal.
Yeah.
The 4 of us who are on the show at the moment, Tracy, me, Chris and Michelle, we love Universal Orlando and we don't want to crap on it. We love the resort. We love everything about it. It's a place that I want to visit more than anywhere else as much as I possibly can. But if we think something's garbage, we will call it out. And it's difficult that if we had somebody from Universal watching us, they would want it to be all in a positive light, which is... that's not fair on our listeners. To be honest. People need to know that there are good things there and there are bad things there because nothing's perfect. It's not a perfect resort.
I know you love it.
No.
You like it.
I never said I love it. I like it.
Yeah, you like it.
What's the conflict there?
Well, so on Fast and Furious, it's a good ride.
It's all right.
I don't think it was what people were expecting. Okay. And like
it wasn't.
And it's like when you're expecting something, like you hear like race cars, you're probably thinking something like over at Hollywood Studios,
Rock and Roller
Coaster with like the car, something like crazy fast. And it didn't end up not being that. And they talk about it on their podcast quite often, actually. You guys bring it up quite often about, Lee's kind of in his own little island and the rest for the most part.
Look, to be honest, the first time we ever rode it was we held an event at the parks with Michelle, who's on the show with us, has her own travel company. And we ended up doing our own weekend event at Universal back in 2019. So the first time that Tracy and I rode Fast and Furious, we took over an entire party bus, just our group, apart from a mom and her 2 kids at the back of the bus must have been wondering what the hell was going on because they have this group of 60 people all whooping and hollering and enjoying what everyone knows is a terrible ride. So it was just, I think it was more the experience with that group of people than the ride itself, but I don't mind it.
What would you say, why do you think it's a terrible ride, though?
I think exactly what CJ said. I think when you think Fast and Furious, a 360-degree tunnel isn't necessarily. I think a lot of people were hoping like something like Test Track from Epcot or Radiator Springs Races from out in California, something that actually moves rather than one that doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. So do you do this full time now, or are you still working at a job?
I wish I was doing this full time. No, I still have a day job. This is in my spare time.
So you never thought about maybe trying to do... Well, actually, okay, this is gonna... Before I ask the rest of this question, actually, when are you moving to Orlando? Are you ever going to come down here? Like, when are you coming?
It has been talked about very much between Tracy and I, and the problem is she's always been 5 years ahead of me. So she was like, 5 years ago, she's ready to do it. And I'm like, no, it's a big deal. I'll be honest, the one thing that puts me off moving to the US is your health system scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother subject.
Really does. She's now all about Korea, so that's where she wants to go. So I've missed that bus, really.
Really?
So it's now getting to the... Yeah.
Is there a universal Korea?
I don't think so.
I don't remember.
Singapore's not that far away. Okay. Beijing's just about to open, so she is all about Korea at this point. I mean, she's even at the point talking about moving there for a year to teach English as a second language.
Oh, wow.
On her own, I might add, without me.
Oh, really?
That's crazy.
That is crazy. Okay, so I mean, man, if you're... So I don't know if you're gonna move here or not. Then I was gonna ask.
Probably not.
Okay. So then I was gonna ask because I was gonna say, you ever think about going to visual and like setting up like a little set and making, kind of going a little further with your podcast, like, or you just kind of want to strictly keep it to audio?
I would like to do video. It's difficult because you guys have got your set, and it's and that issue with being. Tracy and I being here, Michelle being in South Carolina, Chris being there, it's difficult to do that. We did do it for our 10-year anniversary, and I did enjoy it. It gives it a very different dynamic when you can see who you're talking to. It really does. It is something I would like to do in the future, but I think just because of the extra effort in editing a video, I think we'll probably stick to audio for the foreseeable future. I do not envy you guys at all.
It's not too bad. You just kind of throw everything on a track. Ooh, whoops. And then you just kind of cut a bunch of pieces, cut some spots, but
you're a pro at it now, so.
I move very quick at it now. So you're going to just strictly stick to audio. So then I'm curious to see then what like moving forward, what's the next step for you guys? Like how would you bring it to the next level?
That is an interesting question. I honestly don't know, to be honest. I mean, we could always improve our audio. It's always going to be difficult, again, working remotely, as you know. We're at the mercy of the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
And technology doesn't always work. I honestly don't know.
I was coming up with an idea while we were sitting here, and I don't know how it would play out, but I think we should do one visual episode. And you do a podcast on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And that would be awesome.
While you're on the roller coaster, you guys, I don't know how the audio is going to sound, but I just want to hear like a play-by-play walkthrough of the ride. And I think that would be hilarious.
Or like, what if we did like a rapid round where I just asked you a bunch of questions?
Speed questions on Fast and Furious.
Or like
why it's that would be awesome. We talked about it, I think it was 3 weeks ago, because Michelle is a bit of a wuss when it comes to roller coasters.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I know she is very, very nervous for riding Velocicoaster because it doesn't have an over-shoulder restraint. We talked about it briefly that we would love to be able to somehow mic her up for her very first ride, and you just get that initial reaction. I think it would be hilarious.
Awesome.
Please do that.
Can you do that? Because I think, are you allowed to bring... Because if someone's bringing a camera on some of these rides, because there's POVs on YouTube.
Yeah, you can hold your phone. You can.
I don't think you're allowed to hold your phone, but can you put like a wristband on that has like a GoPro attached to it? Do you know if that's okay?
No, I don't. Universal are very strict on record, especially on course. I think after the incident with Julian Dragons,
with the eyeball
back in Yeah, since that happened, they have been so strict about people taking anything on. And to be fair, you can't blame them.
Yeah, I think you have to go through like metal detectors to get on the ride. So there's no way that you can probably.
Oh wow! Yeah, for the crazy ones. So what's your favorite ride over at Universal? What takes the cake, really?
Men in Black.
Oh yes, that was a dumb question. I knew that. What do you love about Men in Black so much?
I am a very competitive person.
Yep.
And so because it has that scoring element to it, it's so re-rad. I mean, I love Men in Black the movie anyway, and it's a throwback to that old school Universal attraction. That's a physical dark ride as well. You don't see many of those so much nowadays.
Yeah,
it's
I think we're getting more into that with like Galaxy's Edge. But as far as that old school sort of animatronic based dark ride, there aren't many of them there. And it's I've stated before, if they ever get rid of Men in Black, if they ever get rid of it entirely rather than retheme it, UUOP is done. I will no longer go to Universal. The podcast will cease.
That will be the end of it right there.
It'd be like the unofficial Islands of Adventure podcast.
So I want to
switch to Disney. That's how bad it is.
Oh man, no. Hear about the it's a Small World ride and walk us through the story of that.
I wanted to ask, when are you gonna ride the Velocicoaster?
Yes, when are you gonna come down?
Yeah.
So wait, actually, before that, so are you getting vaccinated? Are you planning? Because now everything seems to be clearing up, and I know you talked about wanting to come to Orlando, but you weren't too sure if you were gonna get stuck over here. Is that what you were nervous about?
Yeah. It's so awkward. So we had a trip booked for Halloween Horror Nights 30 for last year, for October. We were coming over with our two kids. Last year was a huge year for our family. It was mine and Tracy's 20th wedding anniversary. Our oldest turned 21, our youngest turned 16. So we were coming over for this big last sort of family trip. And obviously COVID hit and we didn't come, and they didn't do Halloween Horror Nights 30. So we rescheduled that for October this year. And then sort of not fully knowing what travel was going to look like from the UK to the US at that point, we decided that we've rescheduled that one as well. So CJ, to go what you were talking about, my issue was what we were hearing initially about travel to the US was that you would have to have a PCR test 3 days before we travel from the UK. Mm-hmm. So even at that point, the trip's booked, the trip's paid for. You have your PCR test, and one of you tests positive. What happens then?
And you get any money back?
I honestly don't know. So then, say you all test negative, you travel over to the US. We were only over for a week. I think it was 8 days. So then the initial reports were that you were going to have to do the same. So you would have to have a PCR test 3 days before traveling home. So my issue at that point, what happens if our youngest tests positive and we test it? What happens then?
Yeah.
And I know the stress head of a person I am, that I won't relax until all four of us have had those tests and we've got those results back.
So you wouldn't even be able to
rescheduled. Yeah, I know I wouldn't. I would just be constantly worrying about those tests. So we rescheduled that one for September next year. And then we're also back over, just the two of us, in November next year for the second Weekender event. So twice next year.
Well, that's a big one to look forward to.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It seems like a lot of things in life have just kind of been like getting pushed off a little bit. But I don't know. A lot of people, I feel like you can look at everything and perceive it differently. So I try to keep an open mindset to where we've been, and having time off and not having to do things so often. You get a time to hang out at home and relax a little and have stuff to look forward to. But I have one question, Lee, that I always jump in and ask everyone, and I wanted to get to it here. So with you obviously amounting to so much, you obviously probably have more that you aspire to get to, but I always wonder, like, how do you define success in like your everyday life? Do you consider yourself successful now? And like, where are you when you define that success?
It's such a difficult question because success means something different to everyone, doesn't it, at the end of the day? I mean, I suppose just being happy in your life, having enough, but also having room to grow is definitely something. As far as the podcast goes, I would consider us a success at this point. I'm very happy with where we are. Can we grow? Yes, of course we can. I always want to be bigger, but then the problem with becoming bigger is it comes with more stuff, and it's finding that time to do that extra stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things that I heard once about podcasts is when people are always worried, it's always worrying about your download figures. Are we getting enough? Should we be getting more? And I used to listen to Libsyn, who we host our podcast with. They have their own podcast. That's how nerdy I was. They were listening to podcasts about podcasting.
Yeah.
It's very sad. And they said, if you held an event, a live event, and the amount of people who subscribe to your podcast or your download figures turned up to that event, would you be happy? And you're like, yeah, I'd be pretty happy with that.
Definitely. That's a great point, because even now, like, and I always say when we started, it was like, even if no one ever listened to this podcast, every day coming here and recording is just like makes me feel better and have like a good conversation with a group of people.
Yep. So
even if, you know, you had like you said, we had a show and have 20 to 100 people show up or whatever, 1,000 people, it's still like, that's a ton of people. And you don't need to define your success off of like what other people think. It's like kind of just doing what you love to do, like you said, and like enjoying that path.
Yeah.
And having that, I like that room to grow, like trying to find that room to grow, but enjoying the journey and not just doing it for the growth.
Yeah, because I used to be at a point when we first started that I was constantly looking, because since we started, there's many universal podcasts popped up, and I've always, up until very recently, kept an eye on them. Felt like I was competing with them up until 2 or 3 years ago, where you go, do you know what? It doesn't matter what they're doing.
Yeah.
I want to concentrate on making what I'm happy with, because at the end of the day, I'm doing this podcast for me.
Yeah.
Like I said to you, when we started, there wasn't really a universal podcast out there. So I set out to make a universal podcast that is something that I would want to listen to. So kind of like you just said there, Justin, it is about, you do this for you. Exactly. And if people want to watch it, brilliant. But at the end of the day, you're doing it because you enjoy it. And that's the main point. If you're doing it because of the people that are listening, then that's the wrong thing to do. Yeah, but you're doing it for you, and that's what it's all about.
I love to hear.
I think that's the best question.
Goosebumps over here.
That was the best answer so far. That was seriously. I don't want
to knock anyone down, but that was a great answer.
That was a great answer. Seriously. Now, so is your podcast now? So, like you said, you love it, you enjoy it. Is it a hobby or is it more of a business at this point?
Because you still have the day job, like you said.
Yes, it's not a business because I don't make any money out of it.
Okay.
Oh wait, you don't?
No.
Oh shoot! I thought you guys made money from the podcast.
No.
Oh shoot!
Nope.
So do you get?
We have the Producers Club setup that is there just to basically fund the hosting for the show, our our domain name for the podcast and stuff like that. Not so much. It's basically there if someone needs a new laptop, someone needs a new microphone, some new equipment, whatever, or a new restaurant opens. There you go, Chris, there's $60. You go and check that restaurant out. It's mainly for that purpose, but we don't take a wage out of it, a salary, anything. That money is there purely for the podcast. So this is entirely a hobby, and it's that, like, it would be difficult at this point to turn it into something more, because it's not just us. So there's the 4 of us on the show, but Chris lives in South Florida, gets to go every 2 or 3 months. Michelle lives in South Carolina as a travel agent. She gets to go a lot. But when you look at what other people are doing, being able to, there's constantly updates going on in those theme parks day to day. And having someone who is going regularly is something you need to be able to keep on top of things. Yes, you can rely on the internet, which is what we did for a long time. We have our core little team of listeners who are out there getting photos and videos and vlogs and all the rest of it that really help us out to round out what we're doing. Seth Kabursky from the Unofficial Guides, he does bits for us. So we do rely on a group of people outside of us on the podcast to help get that information and allow us to stay on top of what's going on at Universal Orlando, because none of us get to go that regularly.
I was gonna say, you guys, it sounds like you might have someone or a couple people. I was saying you guys should try to hire with or find someone to volunteer who lives maybe like a college student near campus that can maybe just update you guys with pictures that is like in film marketing, or like,
yeah, that's not
maybe
a bad idea.
Any of our viewers are listening, because we probably have a handful of college people in Orlando. Reach out to Lee, maybe might be able to help you guys out, send some videos and stuff if they're ever at the parks.
Okay. Not only that though, but you ever think about, because I know, so I keep bringing this up because you say you didn't want to do visual because of just it's so hard. You ever think about trying to maybe get someone on the team that can do visual for you guys, and like doing like a little, like, I don't know, some separate like segments on, you know, a YouTube channel where like they go out to the parks and kind of talk about maybe what you guys were talking about, or, you know, if you can figure out a way to get them to go on a ride with a camera or something like that, like doing something like that. You ever think about
I don't want to get in trouble, but I've brought my phone on rides before and recorded that. I don't know if I'm not gonna be allowed in any parks again.
Yeah, you're not. It's over for you.
I mean, I'm just kidding. My twins done that a couple of times. It wasn't.
What Disney? Because
Disney, you know what, it was Disney.
Yeah,
no, that's fine. No one cares about it.
It was me. It was me.
So you ever? Go ahead.
Well, we've got a friend of ours, Kenneth, who's on. So we have a sister podcast now, the Russia Fears covering Halloween Horror Nights, just starting this year. And Kenneth, who's on that show, he goes out and does vlogs and stuff for us every now and again. But he finds it difficult. Let's just put it that way. It's not easy finding the time himself because he works as well. It's difficult, you know. At the end of the day, we are all just hobbyists doing this thing, and it is difficult when you want to talk about certain other websites and podcasts out there who have a lot of money behind them and allow them to have people whose job it is just to sit in a theme park all day long, and we realize that we can't compete with that. We're never going to be the first one to break news stories or be the best on the spot coverage, and that's not what it's about for us. It's more about our personality.
You guys bring a whole different aspect to it than like the live like reporting, like a news anchor or anything. You guys, like you said, you're bringing the real facts. You're not bringing what the viewers or what the studio wants to hear. You're telling the fans what's really going on there with like your wholeheartedness and what you actually believe. So it goes a long way.
Well, not only that, but you can feel like, I guess you guys don't even really need to do that, because you can feel like every time I listen to your podcast, I'm sure you hear it all the time, and it's like I feel like I'm at the parks. I feel like I'm enjoying it. Because it comes off. You can feel that from you guys. It's so genuine, and it's so like it's a lot of fun listening to you guys. If you guys, whoever's really not listening, you need to go check their podcast out because it really is awesome.
Yeah, especially if you love the parks, or not the parks, Universal.
And sorry, what were you about to say?
It's the one thing we get told more than anything else by our listeners is what people connect to it is that passion, that we have that passion because it's not a job. You know that we're coming at it from a point of view where we're putting in this hard work because we love those parks so much. And we have, I think a lot of it, we come from a very unique perspective as well. With Tracy and I being in the UK, we have a different perspective from the US guys over there. And then Michelle being a travel agent, she brings an even different perspective to the parks.
Definitely.
So we just have a very different dynamic and overview of what's going on at Universal from a lot of those other ones out there that are doing it as a business.
Yeah. Now, speaking of your listeners, I have one here, one listener from our podcast that also listens to yours, and he has a question for you. This is a new segment that we're going to be doing for those of you who are watching. So we'll be posting it on the Instagram. So if you guys want to just DM us like a video of you, and we'll put it up in the when we edit it, we'll put it up. It will be here.
Hi, Lee. I'm Austin. I'm a very big fan of yours and the rest of the crew over at the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. Been listening to you guys for a while now. As you can see, I have my little ET that I got from Universal and my HHN lanyards in Jurassic Park, and my whole room is a collection of Universal stuff. My question for you would be, if you can design any ride for Universal, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good question.
Ooh. Interesting. Talk about thrusting you on the spot as well. Wow, that is tough. It's difficult because we've obviously brainstormed a lot on the show, because you look at theme parks now and it's like, what franchises are there out there because let's be honest, it's all about the IPs now. I think the days of getting Pirates of the Caribbean and it's to go down Disney, because Universal haven't really done it, but that type of thing are long gone. So an IP, I know it's something that was kind of rumored for a while, and I would actually be quite interested. This isn't necessarily one, but this is one I'm going to go on. Was Pacific Rim? I know there was talk of doing a Pacific Rim attraction a few years ago, cool. And if you imagine if they could somehow do an attraction where it is like the film, where you have two people working together inside some sort of, would be amazing.
That would be really cool. That would be really cool.
I don't know how you would do it, but it would be awesome.
Dang, that would be really, really cool. I kind of wish they did like a new ride over at oh my gosh, Poseidon's Fury, because like that is I've been through the attraction. I actually kind of like it. I like it. But as you just talk about, and everyone, it's the CG and all that is
not there.
But I feel like it'd be really cool to do like Percy Jackson kind of. You ever like the Lightning Thief? Because he's the son of Poseidon. So it's like, if you gotta like try to, they have the Harry Potter, why not get the Lightning Thief? Whatever.
I like it. I can tell you were brainstorming on that one. I like it.
What's up?
I
can tell you were thinking on that one. I like it.
I would like them just do a deal with Disney and get rid of Marvel at this point, because I don't feel it's doing Universal any justice at this point, because if people are going to Universal because of the Marvel stuff, but it's Disney, and I wish Disney just chuck as much money as you can at Universal to get that. I put DC, like I am more about DC, so I want some sort of Snyder Universe DC attraction. I would be all over at this point.
What about the Spider-Man ride though? You like the Transformer ride more, right?
Right. Let me clarify this again, because I get a lot of crap for this. Spider-Man is the better attraction, but I enjoy Transformers more.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because I hate those movies with a passion.
Yeah.
But the ride takes all the best bits of those movies, and it's more of an adrenaline rush. You just come off feeling more excited than Transformers. Spider-Man it's
funny.
It has its moments, but it also has its down moments, which Transformers doesn't have. I just think it's more of an adrenaline rush on. So I enjoy Transformers more, but I do understand that Spider-Man is the better overall attraction.
So when you're like going for a ride or you're judging a ride, are you basing it off like the storytelling aspect, or are you basing it off the adrenaline rush?
Is this for him personally or for the podcast?
I would say personally and for podcasts.
I mean, that's a tough question.
That's what we're here to do. Yes.
Well, ordinarily I would say storyline, but then that just throws my whole reasoning for liking Transformers more.
That's why I wanted to ask, because I heard something in a podcast where you were talking, and it was about the storyline of the haunted house, which is going to Disney, but it's still just how like it's such a great storyline going through. So I was kind of curious to see what you were looking for in that storyline, or is it for the adrenaline, or is it the balance of both?
It's weird, because you look at something like Forbidden Journey, which doesn't really have a storyline at all, and it's a fantastic attraction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you look at something like Gringotts that has a much better storyline, but a lot of people feel it's a secondary attraction to Forbidden Journey. So I think it needs to be a balance of both. Mm-hmm. I think if the adrenaline rush is enough, then the story isn't as important.
Yeah.
But if the ride's not a massive adrenaline rush, then you need that story to anchor it. And I think those two attractions are the perfect two attractions to make that point.
Yeah. So what is it like moving forward from here? What's the future dream now? Now that you've kind of accomplished you're not
10-year chapters are in the books on the podcast.
Exactly. So what's next? What's next for Lee and the gang?
Just to keep doing what we're doing, really, and hopefully attract more listeners. Mm-hmm. Get the guys down there more and try and do more sort of on the spot stuff. Like you said, I'd love to get Michelle and Chris when they go to do more vlogging and stuff when they're there, and more live stuff from the parks like we used to. Obviously we've got the next weekender coming next year. They have become such a huge part of what we do now. The one in 2019 was, honestly, I've said it on the podcast before, the best week of my life.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. It's just when I look at what we've accomplished with UUOP, it's like, I love my podcast. It is my baby. I adore it. but looking at that wider community, the friends, the family, we call them our family, that we have created from doing this podcast is beyond anything I could ever have imagined.
Yeah.
You know, I've said it many times on the show that I can go into my local town on a weekend and wander around for an hour and not see a single person I know. I cannot walk around Universal Orlando without bumping into somebody I know, and it is 4,500 miles away from where I live.
That's
and
crazy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's humbling, but I'm very proud of that fact.
Yeah.
That goes to show just how strong like a connection you can build when you just really you're passionate about what you do. You're not doing it for money. You're not doing it for the wrong reasons. You're literally just waking up and talking about what you love with the people you love, and then the people that don't get to know you or that are looking to listen or find that like community, jump on a podcast 4,000 miles away, and now you guys are family. And when you come to the States, it's like, oh my God, there's Lee. That's so crazy to think about.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna ask. That just like gave me a little thing in my head. I wanted to ask, do you get any people that come up to you and ask for pictures or anything like that?
Are you sending autographs and fan mail out?
We haven't done autographs. I think I would find that a little creepy. We have had people randomly come up to us, and it's so weird. It's like, because like if you watch the likes of Tim Tracker or Vincent Vision and that on YouTube, people see them, so they know, they have a visual reference of what they look. So it's different for us, because we don't, you know, we have our Facebook page and Instagram where our pictures are out there, but for the most part it's our voices. And I always remember the first time it happened to us, we were sitting in Finnegan's before Halloween, our first night at Halloween Horror Nights 25, and this guy just walked past. He's like, I don't want to bother you because I know you're with your family, but I just wanted to say I love the podcast. And off he went, and that was it. And it was bizarre, but it was so cool. But we found that people get very nervous meeting us, and it's like that thing, like I said at the beginning, it's like I'm just a person sat at home doing a podcast in my living room.
I'm not anybody.
I'm not anybody special. And we met a listener of ours who's now a very close friend of ours, Thomas. The first time we met him, he was literally shaking.
Wow.
And you look at it and you think, why? Yeah. I'm just like, if you saw me in my day-to-day life, you would not be shaking. Excited about it.
Yo. All right. So before we wrap this up, I got one big question. And that is, if you had any advice for anybody out there that has any goals or dreams or aspirations, what would that be?
I mean, you guys kind of hit it on the head earlier. Just do it. Mm-hmm. Just do it. It's that the worst part of doing anything is that taking that initial step.
Yeah,
100%.
You sit there and shall I do it? Shall I do it? Shall I do it? Just do it.
Yeah.
Whatever, if it's a podcast, a vlog, a blog, whatever it is, a job. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to create the next big thing. It doesn't. I didn't even realize it did. Just do it. Just take that first step. It doesn't have to cost a fortune. You can just do it with whatever you have, and like you said, that first step is your jumping off point, and then you've got something to improve on. Yeah. And trust me, you will improve on it over that time.
Oh yeah, that's. You hit the nail on the head again there, definitely.
Seriously.
I'd like to ask, one thing. What's the key to staying consistent? Because like you've had 456 podcasts. How do you stay consistent? I think we've done a pretty good job staying pretty consistent so far, but there's always room for improvement. So I'd like to hear how
consistent
that is.
And new, fresh ideas and consistent good ideas.
Yeah, and it's tough. That is the tough thing. It's like you say, we've been doing this for 10 years, 456 episodes at this point, and trying to come up with content over that time. And now I'm not being big-headed, and I know the guys would agree with me when I say this. It is 90% me. I am the driving force behind this. And it's not because they are not interested. It's not because they don't want to. It's just I am a control freak. I've said that already. It is my baby, and I am the one that constantly is behind it. And we have, as I say, consistently been putting out a weekly podcast every Tuesday since 2014. And then before that, it was every 2 weeks before that. So we've been weekly since 2014. I think we've missed 2 weeks over Christmas where it was kind of like, you know what? No one's going to listen over Christmas anyway. Let's just leave it. And it's tough even to the point where, like, when we have to look ahead that when we do come over to Orlando is recording stuff to put out while we're not at home during our normal recording schedule. I mean, when we came over for the weekend, we put an episode out. We interviewed a friend of ours who stayed at the new Surfside Inn and Suites beforehand. And that show came out while we were in Orlando, and I got a message off a friend of mine back home. It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting a podcast this week. And it's like, well, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Every week.
It's having someone behind you that has that passion to know that you want it to be the best it can be. Mm-hmm. And do it for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else. That's what we've said already.
Yeah. It's you versus yourself in everything. And that's another thing we try to emphasize here is like, in anything you're doing in life, you're not battling the people around you. Even if you're like playing a sport, like it's you versus how hard you're willing to work. You're either going to quit at some point or you're not going to quit and you're going to keep going. Like I was listening to a song with Nipsey's in it, and it's just like I was running my Blashy Fitness. I was running 3 miles and I don't run at all. And I got like challenged to do this. And like at like mile 2, I was like about to just like stop. I was like, you know what? Like I've done 2 miles. This is good enough. And this song came on. I can't think of the name right now, but it's Nipsey Hussle. And like in it, he's just like, you know, the difference between like me and the people who didn't succeed is just like, I never quit. Mm-hmm. That's the only difference. Like I just never gave up. I went through every single emotion in my life and never quit. And now I made it. And it was like, that's all you have to do. Just never quit. You just keep going. You take the first step and you keep going. And it's great to see people that are accomplishing their goals and have consistently been putting something out no matter the adversity for 10 years.
10 years.
That's quite, honestly, quite the accomplishment.
Weekly. That's crazy.
Trust me, there's been many times over 10 years I've thought about giving it up. I can tell you that for nothing.
But you haven't. And that's where you get to look back and just say, like, I'm still here. And it's just like, it puts a smile. Like, you can see when you talk about your passion, your baby, like, how happy you really do get. So I hope
seriously.
Our viewers watching this get to take the time to go check out some episodes. Maybe even listen to all, 456?
56, yeah.
How many hours would that take? I wonder if that's...
Man. One of these days I'm going to sit down and work it out and see how many it is, but it's a lot.
Someone can probably make a whole YouTube channel of like me watching the unofficial Universal podcast for 364 days straight.
All right, Lee. Well, it's been an absolute honor having you on.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Where can our listeners and our viewers find you guys? So it's on Instagram. It's UUOP podcast?
UUO podcast. We are pretty much UUO podcast wherever you want to find us. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you want to find the show, we are on wherever you find podcasts. We are there. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. You can find us on our own website, which is uuopodcast.com. But if you get your podcast, we will be there. I can guarantee you.
There we go, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for watching and listening. And make sure to like and subscribe wherever you are. And we will see you in the next episode.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace, boys.